I can still remember the day I unearthed that damned iron chest in my backyard. It feels like a lifetime ago, but the memory is seared into my mind. The way the rusted lock crumbled under my shovel, the musty smell that wafted out as I pried open the lid. And what I found inside, well, that's where the true horror began. I should start at the beginning. My name is Robert Blackwood, and I've lived in this old family home for 40 years. It's a sprawling Victorian estate in my family that has been passed down from one Blackwood to the next for generations. I've always been fascinated by the history of the place, the faded photographs, and the antique trinkets that filled every room. But it was when I decided to build a small garden shed in the backyard that I stumbled upon the buried treasure. I had been digging into the hard earth with my shovel, sweat dripping down my brow, when the blade struck something metallic. Curious, I brushed away the soil to reveal a tarnished iron chest, half buried and nearly obscured by twisted tree roots. My heart raced with excitement as I cleared away the remaining dirt. This had to be some family heirloom hidden away for decades. It may have contained old letters or valuable jewelry passed down through the generations. With trembling hands, I pried open the corroded lock and lifted the lid. What greeted me made my blood run cold. Inside the chest were dozens of old photographs, black and white portraits of my ancestors dating back over a century. But there was something deeply unsettling about them. Upon closer inspection, I realized that in every single image, the subject's left eye had been crudely gouged out, leaving only a hollow, empty socket. I stared at the photos in stunned silence, my mind reeling. Who would do such a thing? And why had this disturbing chest been hidden away, buried in the backyard for how long? A chill ran down my spine as I carefully sifted through the eerie photographs. There were images of stern-faced men, severe-looking women, and even a few children, all marked by that same awful mutilation. I found portraits of my great-grandparents, grandparents, and even my parents, their left eye missing. The further I dug into the chest, the more the pit of dread in my stomach grew. These weren't just random family photos. They were all Blackwoods. My ancestors, going back generations, had been systematically robbed of their left eyes, and someone had meticulously collected the evidence, preserving it in this iron tomb. With trembling hands, I gathered the photos and carried them inside, my mind racing to make sense of this macabre discovery. A sense of unease crept up my spine as I sat at the kitchen table, laying the portraits before me. I felt as if I was being watched. Glancing nervously over my shoulder, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, but still, that prickling sensation persisted. Shaking off the feeling, I returned to the photos, carefully examining each one. The more I stared at the empty eye sockets, the more disturbed I became. What could have possibly driven someone to commit such a horrific act against my family? And why had it been hidden away for so long? I spent hours poring over the photographs, searching for clues that might illuminate this macabre mystery. But the images revealed nothing beyond the chilling mutilation. No hints about the perpetrator, no context for the crime, just row after row of Blackwood ancestors, all robbed of their left eyes. As night fell, I found myself growing increasingly unsettled. The longer I stared at those lifeless, one-eyed gazes, the more I felt like I was being observed. I would glance up, half expecting to see some dark, shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the room. But there was never anything there. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the eyes in the photographs were following me, piercing my soul. I tried to ignore it, to push the uneasy sensation aside, but it only grew more vital as the hours ticked by. Eventually, I gathered the photos and placed them back in the iron chest, unable to stand the scrutiny of those missing left eyes any longer. I locked the lid and shoved the chest into the hall closet, determined to forget the disturbing ordeal, but the unease only intensified. As I prepared for bed, I kept catching glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, fleeting shadows that vanished the moment I turned to look. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw those empty sockets staring back at me, haunting my dreams. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences only escalated. Objects in my home would seemingly move independently, doors would slam shut without apparent cause, and there was always that persistent sensation of being watched. I began to question my sanity, wondering if I was succumbing to paranoia and delusion, But then the apparitions started appearing. It began with glimpses. A shadowy figure in the hallway, a pale face peering out from the darkened stairwell. At first, I would blink, and the vision would vanish. But soon, the ghostly figures became more persistent, lingering in the corners of my vision. And without fail, every one of them was missing their left eye. I can still remember the first time I got a clear look at one of the apparitions. I had been sitting in the living room, trying to read a book, when I felt a presence behind me. Slowly, I turned, and there it was. A translucent, humanoid figure with a sunken, eyeless socket on its left side. Its empty gaze bore into me, sending a chill down my spine. I sat there, frozen in terror, as the apparition drifted closer. I could feel its icy presence enveloping me, and for a moment, I swore I could hear a faint, whispering voice. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the specter vanished, leaving me shaking in my chair. From that day on, the ghostly figures became a regular occurrence in my home. I would catch glimpses of them out of the corner of my eye, hovering in the shadows or peering out from behind closed doors. And without fail, every single one was missing their left eye. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that I was seeing things, that the stress of discovering that damn chest had finally broken me. But the more I saw those haunting one-eyed faces, the more I realized that this was no mere delusion. Something, or someone, was manifesting in my home, and it was directly connected to the horrific mutilations I had found in the photographs. I desperately tried to understand it all, scouring the internet and local libraries for information about the Blackwood family history. Perhaps there was some dark secret, some terrible event that could explain the missing eyes and the haunting apparitions. But my searches turned up nothing. The Blackwoods were a relatively unremarkable family, as far as I could tell, respectable community members with no known history of scandal or violence. There was no record of any eye-gouging ritual or curse, no tales of vengeful spirits. Just a long line of ordinary people, their left eyes permanently stolen from their portraits. Frustrated and increasingly unnerved, I turned to more esoteric sources, occult forums, paranormal blogs, anything that might offer some insight into what was happening in my home. And that's when I stumbled upon a disturbing theory. According to some fringe occult beliefs, the left eye holds special significance, a gateway to the soul, a conduit for powerful spiritual energy. If performed correctly, the left eye's systematic removal could unlock extraordinary psychic abilities or even grant immortality. The more I read, the more I realized this chilling idea might be true. After all, why else would someone systematically target my family's left eye, preserving the evidence in that iron chest? What kind of dark, arcane ritual could this be connected to? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. If this was true, the apparitions I had seen were not mere ghosts, but something infinitely more sinister. Powerful, vengeful entities drawn to my home by violating my ancestors' eyes. And if that was the case, then I was in grave danger. Panic began to set in as I considered the implications. These entities, whatever they were, had been dormant for decades, trapped by the confinement of the iron chest. But now that I had unearthed their resting place, they were free to roam, seeking vengeance for the crime committed against their mortal forms. I had to get rid of that chest, to lock away the evidence of my family's suffering once and for all. Perhaps the haunting would cease, and I could reclaim my home from these vengeful spirits. With trembling hands, I retrieved the chest from the hall closet and returned it to the yard. As I dug a new hole to bury it, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Those empty, one-eyed gazes seemed to bore into me as if the photographs themselves were pleading with me not to conceal them again. But I knew I had no choice. This dark family secret had to be buried once and for all. So, with a heavy heart, I lowered the chest back into the earth and covered it over, tamping down the soil until the ground was smooth and undisturbed. For a moment I dared to hope that the haunting would cease, that the apparitions would finally leave me in peace. But as I turned to head back inside, a chill ran down my spine. There, just at the edge of the tree line, I caught a glimpse of a pale, ghostly figure, its single, soulless eye fixed upon me. From that day on, the haunting only grew worse. The apparitions became bolder, materializing more frequently and lingering for longer periods. I would wake in the middle of the night to the sensation of cold, spectral hands reaching for me, or find myself paralyzed by the sight of a faceless, eyeless figure looming over my bed. Try as I might, I could never entirely escape their presence. They followed me from room to room, watching my every move with those eerie, empty sockets, and always, I could hear that faint, whispering voice calling out to me, beckoning me to join them. I became a virtual prisoner in my own home, too terrified to venture outside lest the apparitions follow me. I barricaded the doors and windows, desperate to keep the haunting confined within the walls of the old Blackwood estate. But no matter what I did, I could never shake the feeling of being watched, of those hollow eyes burning into me from the shadows. And then, one night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding, to find a spectral figure standing at the foot of my bed. Its eyeless gaze bore into me, and I swore I could hear a faint, desperate plea echoing in my mind. "Help us," the voice whispered. "Set us free." At that moment, I knew I could no longer ignore the haunting. Whatever dark forces had been unleashed by the discovery of that iron chest, they were only growing stronger. And if I didn't find a way to appease them, to end this cursed legacy, I feared I would be consumed by the spirits I had tried to conceal. With a deep breath, I resolved to confront the haunting head-on. I would delve deeper into the Blackwood family history, uncover the truth behind the missing eyes, and hopefully find a way to put these restless spirits to rest. It was a risky gamble, but I had run out of options. And so, armed with only my determination and a flickering lantern, I set out to unravel the mysteries of the Chest of Eyes once and for all. The first step was to return to the site where I had initially unearthed the cursed chest. Perhaps clues were hidden in the soil, remnants of some ancient ritual or occult practice. So, with trembling hands, I began to carefully dig, sifting through the earth in search of any telltale signs. As the hours ticked, my efforts were rewarded with a startling discovery, a small, weathered book half buried beneath the tree roots. I brushed off the dirt and cracked open the damp pages, my heart racing with anticipation. The book appeared to be some occult journal filled with arcane symbols and cryptic passages. A chilling realization dawned on me as I pored over the faded text. This wasn't just any occult text. It was a detailed record of the Blackwood family's dark rituals, a step-by-step guide to the systematic removal of their left eyes. The journal described an ancient ceremony meant to unlock the gateway to the soul and grant the participants extraordinary psychic abilities. According to the text, removing the left eye was crucial to sever the connection between the physical body and the spiritual realm. I felt bile rise in my throat as I read the gruesome details, the descriptions of the ritual, and the supposed benefits it would bestow. My ancestors had believed that by systematically gouging out the left eyes of each generation, they could accumulate a vast reserve of occult power, becoming immortal and all-seeing. The journal even contained crude sketches of the iron chest, depicting it as a sacred repository for the stolen eyes, a way to harness and preserve the spiritual essence that had been extracted. It was a chilling revelation that sent a shiver down my spine. With shaking hands, I continued to flip through the pages, desperate to understand the full extent of this macabre legacy, and that's when I stumbled upon a disturbing entry that made my blood cold. According to the journal, the ritual could only be completed when the final eye was taken, and the last living Blackwood had been stripped of their left eye. Only then, the text claimed, would the spirits of the ancestors be freed, ushering in a new era of unimaginable power. It was a horrifying realization. The apparitions I had been seeing, the haunting that plagued my home, were not the product of some random supernatural forces. They were the direct result of my family's twisted occult practices, the vengeful spirits of my ancestors, trapped and seeking to complete the ritual. And I, the last living Blackwood, was the final piece of the puzzle. My left eye was the key to unlocking their eternal power, the final sacrifice to free them. I sat there, the journal trembling in my hands, utterly paralyzed by the weight of this revelation. All this time, I had thought I was dealing with mere ghosts when, in reality, I was facing something far more sinister. A centuries-old curse, a spiritual trap that my ancestors had meticulously laid. As the reality of the situation sank in, I knew I had to act quickly. Those spectral figures, those whispering voices, were only growing stronger. They would stop at nothing to claim my left eye, to complete the ritual, and unlock their eternal power. I had to find a way to break the curse and end this dreadful legacy. But how? The journal offered no clues about unraveling the dark forces that had been unleashed. I was alone, facing an enemy that transcended the physical realm. With a growing dread, I returned to the iron chest, carefully unearthing it from the soil again. I had to find some way to contain the spirits, to seal them away before they could claim me as their final sacrifice. The familiar feeling of being watched washed over me as I pried open the rusted lid. Those empty, one-eyed gazes seemed to bore into me, pleading and accusing all at once. I shuddered, my heart pounding in my ears as I began to carefully sort through the photographs, searching for any clue that might help me break the curse. It was then that I noticed something peculiar about the arrangement of the photos. Rather than being haphazardly tossed into the chest, they were carefully organized, grouped in what appeared to be familial clusters. Within each group, the eyes had been removed in a specific pattern, always the left eye and always in a clockwise rotation. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the implications. This wasn't just random vandalism or an act of desecration. It was a deliberate, systematic ritual designed to strip away the left eyes of each Blackwood generation systematically. With trembling fingers, I began tracing the pattern, following the progression of the missing eyes as they cycled through each family unit. And that's when I noticed something else, something even more disturbing. The final photographs were devoid of eyes at the center of the chest, not just the left, but both. It was as if the ritual had reached its crescendo, the final Blackwood sacrifice being stripped of both spiritual gateways. My heart sank as I realized the implications. This wasn't just about unlocking some arcane power, it was about transcending the physical realm entirely, shedding the mortal form to achieve a pure, spiritual consciousness. And I was the last piece of the puzzle, the final offering needed to complete the ritual. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I was the last Blackwood, the final sacrifice needed to unleash the full power of this twisted ritual. And if I didn't find a way to stop it, those vengeful spirits would stop at nothing to claim my left eye, condemning me to the same fate as my ancestors. With trembling hands, I carefully placed the photographs back into the iron chest, my mind racing to find a solution. I had to break the curse, to find a way to end this dreadful legacy before it consumed me. As I pored over the occult journal, searching for any clues or weaknesses in the ritual, a thought occurred to me. The spirits were bound to the physical repository of the stolen eyes, the iron chest itself. If I could find a way to destroy or contain that vessel, I could sever their connection to the mortal realm and prevent them from claiming my eye. Without hesitation, I grabbed the chest and dragged it deep into the basement, locking it away in the darkest corner. I then set about fortifying the room, barricading the doors and windows, and surrounding the chest with a circle of protective wards and symbols. If these vengeful spirits were going to come for me, they would have to work for it. For the next several days, I remained holed up in the basement, poring over the occult journal and searching for any weaknesses in the ritual. I tried a variety of spells and incantations, but nothing seemed to have any effect on the haunting. The apparitions continued to appear, their hollow gazes fixed upon me, and the whispering voices grew ever more insistent. Then I stumbled upon a passage in the journal that caught my eye. It spoke of a rare and powerful talisman that could break the spiritual bond between the mortal and the ethereal realms. According to the text, this artifact, known as the Eye of Oblivion, could sever the connection between a person's physical eye and their metaphysical essence. My heart raced as I read the description, realizing this could be the key to breaking the curse. If I could somehow obtain this talisman and use it to remove my left eye, perhaps I could disrupt the ritual and free my family from the vengeful spirits that had been tormenting them for generations. Without hesitation, I began searching the house, tearing through every room and crawl space in search of any clues that might lead me to the Eye of Oblivion. I knew it was a long shot, but I ran out of options. If I couldn't find a way to stop the ritual, those ghostly figures would eventually break through my defenses and claim me as their final sacrifice. Days turned into weeks as I scoured every nook and cranny of the old Blackwood estate, but the talisman remained elusive. The haunting only grew more persistent, the apparitions becoming bolder and more aggressive. I could feel the spirits closing in, their whispering voices echoing through the halls, taunting me with promises of eternal power. Finally, in a desperate last-ditch effort, I decided to venture back into the basement, hoping against hope that the answer might somehow be hidden there. As I approached the iron chest, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, a palpable malevolence emanating from the cursed artifact. With trembling hands, I slowly opened the lid, bracing myself for the onslaught of those haunting, one-eyed gazes. But as I peered inside, I was met with a startling sight. The photographs were gone, replaced by a single, glimmering object. Reaching in, I carefully extracted the talisman, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was a small, circular pendant carved from some unknown material that seemed to shift and ripple like flowing water. At its center was a single iridescent eye, its gaze both mesmerizing and unsettling. I held the Eye of Oblivion in my palm, feeling its power thrum through my veins. This was it. My last chance to break the curse and put an end to the haunting once and for all. With a deep, steadying breath, I steeled my resolve and prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. Cradling the talisman in my hands, I pressed the iridescent eye against my left socket, gritting my teeth against the searing pain. As I felt the eye pierce through the delicate tissue, a wave of dizzying power surged through me, making my vision blur and my head spin. For a moment I was overcome by a sense of weightlessness, as if my very being was being pulled apart at the seams. And then, the world around me erupted in a cacophony of unearthly screams. The spectral figures haunting me came bursting forth from the shadows, their hollow eyes blazing with fury. They converged on me, their icy hands clawing at my flesh, desperate to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. But as they drew near, the power of the Eye of Oblivion flared to life, creating a shimmering barrier that held them at bay. I could feel the talisman's energy pulsing through me, feeding off the spiritual essence violently stripped from my ancestors. It was as if the Eye of Oblivion was devouring the foundation of the curse, severing the bond between the physical and the ethereal. The ghostly figures howled in agony, their forms flickering and distorting as the talisman's power surged. They began to crumble, their spectral bodies dissolving into wisps of smoke and shadow. And with each vanishing apparition, I could feel the oppressive weight of the haunting lifting, the air growing lighter and more breathable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the basement fell silent, save for the faint ringing in my ears. I stood there, swaying slightly, the Eye of Oblivion still clutched in my hand. The curse had been broken, and the vengeful spirits of my ancestors were finally at rest. But as I gazed down at the iridescent talisman, a new wave of dread washed over me. Now that the ritual had been disrupted, what would become of the power so painstakingly harvested over the generations? And what would be the price I would have to pay for wielding such a potent, arcane artifact? I knew I could not simply discard the Eye of Oblivion, for its power was both a blessing and a curse. It had freed me from the haunting, but at the cost of my left eye, the very thing that had been the focus of my family's twisted ritual. As I stared into the talisman's shimmering, one-eyed gaze, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets it might hold, what unseen forces it could unleash. Was I trading one curse for another, dooming myself to a more terrifying fate than the one I had just escaped? Only time will tell. But the haunting had been silenced for now, and the Blackwood family's dark legacy had finally been laid to rest. I was unsure whether that was a cause for celebration or dread. All I knew was that I had to find a way to keep the Eye of Oblivion safe, to prevent its power from falling into the wrong hands. The consequences could be unimaginable if the wrong person were to wield such a potent talisman. With a heavy heart, I sealed the basement. I set about fortifying the Blackwood estate, determined to protect myself and the world from the dangerous legacy I had just uncovered. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. In the following weeks, I was in a strange and unsettling limbo. The haunting had ceased, and the ghostly apparitions no longer roamed the halls of the Blackwood estate. Yet, I could not shake the unease that permeated my every waking moment. The Eye of Oblivion, that shimmering talisman, now rested securely in a hidden safe within the basement. Its power thrummed and pulsed, a constant reminder of my sacrifice to break the family curse. I could feel its influence seeping into my consciousness, whispering alluring promises of knowledge and control. Try as I might, I couldn't escape the artifact's pull. It had become a part of me, an extension of my very being. And with each passing day, I grew more and more attuned to its arcane energies, my senses heightening, my mind expanding. At first, the changes were subtle, a keener sense of perception and an uncanny ability to anticipate the thoughts and actions of those around me. But soon, the effects became more pronounced, manifesting in ways that fascinated and terrified me. I found that I could sense the presence of others, even when they were out of sight. Their emotional states and underlying desires were as clear to me as if they were written on their faces. When I focused my mind, I could even glimpse fleeting visions of the future, snatches of events yet to unfold. This newfound power was both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it granted me insight and awareness bordering on the supernatural. But on the other hand, it made it increasingly difficult to engage with the world around me and maintain any semblance of normalcy in my life. The people in my life, my friends, neighbors, even my own family, began to feel like strangers to me, their thoughts and motivations laid bare before my probing gaze. I found myself withdrawing, retreating further into the sanctity of the Blackwood estate, where I could indulge in the Eye of Oblivion's power without fear of judgment or scrutiny. And as my isolation deepened, so too did my obsession with the talisman. I spent countless hours poring over the occult journal, searching for any clues or insights that might unlock the full extent of its abilities. I conducted experiments, pushing the boundaries of my newfound powers, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and control. It was during one of these sessions that I made a startling discovery. Buried deep within the journal's pages was a passage that described a shadowy, ethereal realm, a plane of existence that lay beyond the veil of the physical world. According to the text, the Eye of Oblivion held the key to traversing this otherworldly domain. My heart raced as I read the description, igniting a newfound sense of purpose. If I could unlock the secrets of this spectral realm, perhaps I could find a way to harness its power and push the boundaries of human consciousness even further. The possibilities were limitless, and the temptation was overwhelming. Without hesitation, I began the ritual, carefully following the instructions in the journal. I steadied my breathing, focused my mind, and pressed the talisman's iridescent eye against my socket, once again feeling the searing pain as it pierced through the delicate tissue. However, the sensation was different this time, more intense and all-consuming. As the power of the Eye of Oblivion surged through me, the world around me seemed to shift and distort, the very fabric of reality bending and twisting. Suddenly, I was in a realm unlike anything I had ever experienced. The air was thick and heavy, tinged with an otherworldly luminescence that cast everything in an eerie, ethereal glow. And all around me, I could sense the presence of something. Entities, spirits, or beings that defied all conventional understanding. Curiosity and trepidation warred within me as I cautiously explored this alien landscape. My senses heightened almost overwhelmingly. I could feel the energy of the place pulsing through me, a raw and primal force that both thrilled and terrified me. As I ventured deeper into the spectral realm, I encountered these strange, ethereal creatures, beings that seemed to exist on a plane of consciousness far beyond my own. They moved with a fluid, almost serpentine grace, their forms shifting and undulating in ways that made my mind reel. And to my astonishment, I found that I could communicate with them, our thoughts and emotions intertwining in a dance of shared understanding. They were unlike anything I had ever encountered, ancient and powerful entities that wielded abilities that bordered on the divine. Emboldened by this discovery, I began to push the boundaries of my interaction with these otherworldly beings, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. I asked questions and probed their minds, desperate to uncover the secrets of this realm and the power it held. In return, they began to share their wisdom, imparting fragments of knowledge that both enlightened and unsettled me. They spoke of forces transcending the physical world, energies and dimensions that lay beyond the ken of mortal understanding. They hinted at unlocking even greater power, which could reshape reality's very fabric. The more I learned, the more I craved. I became obsessed, driven to push the limits of my newfound abilities to forge a deeper connection with these ethereal entities. I needed to understand the full extent of the Eye of Oblivion's power and harness it for my purposes. But as I delved deeper into the spectral realm, I began to sense a growing unease, a presence that watched me with a cold, unseen gaze. And the more I probed, the more I felt a mounting sense of dread, as if I were treading upon the territory of something ancient and profoundly dangerous. Still, I pressed on, my thirst for knowledge and power overriding any lingering sense of caution. I had to know more and push the boundaries even further. And so, I continued to delve deeper into the otherworldly realm, heedless of the warnings that whispered in my mind. I realized the genuine peril I had unleashed when I felt the icy grip of a spectral hand upon my shoulder. Whirling around, I found myself face to face with a towering, ethereal figure, a being of pure malevolence, its empty gaze boring into the very depths of my soul. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I had ventured too far and trespassed upon powers beyond my control. As the entity's icy tendrils wrapped around me, dragging me deeper into the spectral abyss, I realized with a sinking heart that I had traded one curse for another, one that might consume me, body and soul. As the towering, ethereal figure enveloped me in its icy grip, I felt a surge of primal terror, unlike anything I had ever experienced. At that moment, I realized my actions' true folly, my reckless pursuit of power and knowledge through the Eye of Oblivion. I had ventured too far into the spectral realm, trespassing upon forces beyond my mortal comprehension. I found myself at the mercy of an evil entity that emanated pure malice and darkness. Struggling against its unearthly hold, I desperately tried to focus the talisman's power to break somehow free and escape this nightmarish realm. But the more I pushed, the tighter the entity's grip became, as if it could sense my every thought and intention. A creeping sense of dread gripped me as I realized that I may have doomed myself, that my quest for knowledge and control had led me down a path from which there might be no return. I had traded one cursed legacy for another, and now I faced the very real possibility of being consumed, both physically and spiritually, by this otherworldly force. As the darkness closed in around me, I could feel the Eye of Oblivion's power beginning to wane, its once vibrant energy fading. Was this the price I would have to pay for my hubris? To have the very artifact that had granted me such extraordinary abilities ultimately fail me in my hour of greatest need? The entity's grip tightened, and I felt my consciousness slipping away, my mind slowly pulled into the abyss. In those final, fleeting moments, I couldn't help but wonder if I had doomed not just myself, but the entire Blackwood legacy to an eternity of torment and despair. And then, everything went black. I cannot say what became of me after that fateful encounter. The fate of my mortal form and the Blackwood family's cursed legacy remains mysterious. Perhaps I was consumed by the evil entity, my soul forever trapped in that spectral realm. Or perhaps, through some miracle, I managed to escape, carrying the burden of the Eye of Oblivion with me. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more spine-chilling tales. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and share your scary encounters. Also, consider joining the Fear Frequencies community for exclusive perks and early access to new content. Your support helps us create even more thrilling stories. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider leaving a super thanks.